Welcome to the I-24 News Desk. I'm Jeff Smith, and these are the major headlines we're following from around the world. First, the European Union president is calling on world leaders to step up in order to avoid a regional crisis and to protect the European Union partnership. Prime ministers and presidents from 27 member states are in Italy's capital right now to mark the 60th anniversary of the Rome Treaty. That was the origin of the European Union. German Chancellor Angela Merkel says she still believes in the legacy and the bright promise of European integration.
We set our sights towards the future. We want a safe Europe, a protective Europe, and that means a better protection of our outer borders. We want a Europe that is economically strong, meaning we'll meet the challenges of digitalization. We want a caring Europe. We have different social systems in our countries, but we want, for instance, the equality of men and women. And we want a stronger Europe, meaning we intend to work closer on defense.
Meanwhile, in London, thousands of pro-EU demonstrators marched through the streets in support of the partnership. They're protesting the fact that British Prime Minister Theresa May will trigger Article 50 next week, and that will begin the irreversible two-year window for exit negotiations. In Berlin, about 6,000 demonstrators rallied near the Brandenburg Gate, also in support of the European Union partnership. But it was a different scene in Rome, where thousands of demonstrators packed 6 different rallies to say the EU is broken and doesn't protect their interests anymore. In Rome, union leaders, farmers, and other political activists marched through the streets. Anti-migrant posters have been plastered on boards up across the city. Joining me now on Skype from London is our Europe correspondent, Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jonathan, noticeably absent, of course, from that Rome conference is Britain. They'll be triggering Article 50 on Wednesday to start officially the leaving process. So what do the protesters in London have to say?
That's right. Those protesters, Jeff, in London are saying that they like the EU and that despite the vote of the British public last June to leave the European Union, they think that Britain is pursuing too hard a Brexit. But they are not representative necessarily of the majority of Britons who did vote at that referendum to leave the EU. And similarly, as you said, even in Rome, where those other member states, the 27 others except for Britain, are meeting to celebrate 60 years of the European Union and to reaffirm their commitment to it in the future, we saw protests from the Eurosceptic Fratelli d'Italia party, who wants to highlight trade inequities within the bloc. Europe is certainly facing some challenges, not just from Brexit, but also from recent economic problems and also from the issue of migration. You heard German Chancellor Angela Merkel there talking about strengthening the external borders of Europe, but plenty of Eurosceptics point to her policy of welcoming in so many refugees as part of the problem that Europe now faces, with millions of people from a different continent, from war-torn lands around the Middle East, and some that they say are economic migrants, draining Europe in some sense.
And Jonathan,
so certainly
we know
Euroscepticism is on the rise.
In Rome, you have these dozens of leaders, like you mentioned, talking about the bright future of integration, but is there any specific policy or discussion they're having to try and strengthen the partnership and address those concerns about immigration?
Well, that really is the challenge for the EU in the years ahead. And if they wish to celebrate another 60 years, not just the last 60 years, that's what they'll be discussing at summits like the one in Rome, even agreeing on the statement that they would be signing together, which Britain isn't signing with them in this instance. They had trouble agreeing on exactly how that reaffirmation of their vows, let's say, should look. That's because not all the countries agree, because not all the countries have a similar outlook or needs from that union. If the European Union is to work, it needs to work for all those member states in bad times as well as good. As an ideal, plenty see it as one worth pursuing. But at times of challenge like those in the present time, many Eurosceptics are pointing towards the difficulties that the member states are having in collaborating and cooperating with one another to make the next 60 years a success.
Jonathan Sacerdoti live for us in London right now as these protests continue across the European continent, some in support and some opposed to the EU, a story we will stay on top of